Welcome to another Brand Doctor podcast episode for you. Today, I have an awesome guest, entrepreneur, fashion designer, New York Fashion Week regular, newly engaged, so congratulations. I want to welcome my man, founder and CEO of Grungy Gentleman, Jace Lipstein. What is going on, my man?
Not much. How are you? I'm excited to do the podcast.
Bro, you are a tough guy to lock down. busy man, working with the NBA and working with all of these pro athletes and working on this brand Grungy Gentleman now for a few years. I really want to introduce you to my audience. And I really want to get this. My selfishness here is wanting to know the story from the ground up. I love having folks like you on the show that literally start something from nothing and build it to the level that you have it right now. So how did Grungy Gentleman get started?
Grungy Gentleman got started by chance. I definitely saw a hole in the men's market, basically something that interests me. Like I want to say when our company started, which was around 10 years ago, fashion with sports wasn't really covered, and music as well. I kind of wanted to know like what Rob Gronkowski was wearing to the gym. You know, these are the guys who were like maybe the best players in their field, and you know, also probably had big contracts, got great girls, that drove the best cars. So, you know, nobody was really covering that. And I felt like, man, it would be really cool to do like a masculine style approach, you know, towards sports, music. And what I call entertainment is like actors and like movies and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And nobody was really covering it. So I did see a hole in it. But it kind of happened by chance. It's a bit of a story, so I don't want to bore you too long. But yeah, Grungy Gentleman kind of was a media company. It was a media company for about 4.5 years. We were essentially a publication. We were running off a Blogger format, like actually, like Blogger was the actual name of the company. But what I did was we had a web designer customize a complete website. So it actually, the only thing that was like sort of blog about it was that it posted in like sequential order. So you couldn't really control that, but we always created original content. We weren't necessarily like posting just like a picture of something that was on like Hypebeast, although I would always be on Hypebeast. We just necessarily didn't cover content that way. So that kind of got a little bit of attention, and we started working with emerging designers like for collaborations. And I was very excited because, you know, to have our brand on product, you know, not only is it cool, but I felt like that was definitely the next like sort of logical step for our company and our brand, and where I felt like the marketplace was heading. Those collaborations sort of did well, and it was a blessing. They got covered by like a bunch of publications, and they were very limited, extremely limited, but it got a lot of attention. So they eventually led to capsule collections with emerging designers. From there, Nas approached me, who's obviously a hip hop legend, and we co-created a collection and a brand that he still has to this day called History, HSTRY. And, you know, we helped with, you know, design, logo, pretty much a lot. And Nas was incredible to work with. He was hands-on in everything. He was amazing. It was a 33-piece collection. We were able to get into some really good retailers and stuff. So randomly at an event, this is where the story comes a little bit full circle. Somebody had seen like our Nas collection in GQ actually, and we were at it was back in the day when Mercedes-Benz was still running Fashion Week, and someone was like, "Hey, you know, saw what you did with Nas. It was amazing." And I was like, very green, and I was excited that somebody even like knew what they were even like talking about, right? So I was like, oh, thank you so much. They're like, do you do any of your own designs? And foolishly and just like an idiot, I kind of was like, oh yeah, like you got to see it. It's on my phone. So I like take out my phone and I show them a bunch of my designs, and they're like, we have a spot that we're taking over, which was the Hudson Hotel, the night before Fashion Week starts, and we're looking for a designer to kick off Fashion Week. Are you, do you want to do it? And I was like, matter of fact, I do. So I, obviously essentially launched our company from there, and it was an incredible platform to sort of introduce it to the consumer.
Wow. So let's back up a second. That's phenomenal. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
Let's back up a second and talk about collaborations and connections and how you develop those relationships, because I think a lot of my audience, including myself, have really identified the number one factor, whether or not your brand is going to get to that next level or not, is due to the relationships that are built between founders, team, and so forth, with other collaborators that could help you drive the brand and the business. So my question to you is, how did you develop those connections? How did you develop those relationships? Nas is one of my favorite rappers of all time. One of my goals in my life is to meet this guy and just literally shake his hand and thank him, right? How does that come around? And, and how did you manifest that is the question.
Well, first of all, it definitely is humbling and still is. Someone from his team reached out is actually how that specific partnership happened. However, I don't want anyone on this podcast to get anything misconstrued. Generally, I have to, or especially earlier on, had to claw and like dig my nails and pour my heart on the table and kill for things, Yeah.
Talk about that for a second, Jace. I don't think people pay enough attention to that consistency and perseverance. Could you give us an example of how you had to claw and how you had to continue to follow up and continue to get those no's until you finally got that yes?
Well, I'll give you a perfect example, and I'm not trying to plug this. It's actually a great, I consider it a rewarding story. I'm working with a brand called Pendleton, and I'm obsessed with them or their company. I'm a skier. I don't know how great I am, but I love it. I'm definitely could be an idiot out there. So if any skiers want to link up, hit me. I'm always down to ride. But no, I started like checking out their stuff at like really nice ski hotels and became a fan of their brand. I wanted to work with them. I hit them up 4 times to do so. They said no 4 times in a row. They hit me up that like they were in town and that they had like their new collection and just for me to see it. Really, it was probably a generic email. I responded and was like, hey, we'd love to see you. They, whatever, was like, cool, come by. And I got a yes. And the reason why I got a yes is because I literally poured my heart on the table. Like I actually was like singing for myself, where I tried so hard and just really was passionate. And one, I believed in what I wanted to do, but I really was passionate about Pendleton and why I wanted to work with them. And, I know that they're right now working with Nike, Kith, Tommy Bahama, and like us. I'm sure there might be 1 or 2 other brands, but it's very, very, very limited. And we just did a jacket with them. It's out right now on our website. And it's just like awesome because like I just came back from Whistler. I was with my brother skiing, and randomly, because like you can't almost like draw this up, but when we got the inventory, that was like my first time wearing it was in Whistler. So like, which is full circle because like, that's a ski town. That's kind of how I started liking Pendleton. So, but like, like here's the deal. Like I could have given up on that easily. And like you know, but like at the end of the day, like what's the worst thing they were going to do? Say no again? Like who cares? Like, you know, like, you know, just keep swinging, man.
I
You know?
love it. I love it. I love that mentality. You know, a lot of you guys that have been following me and watching me over the past couple months, we started brandingforathletes.com, and I am vigorously reaching out to, we're starting with the NFL, and I'm vigorously reaching out to every single player. I don't care if you're a top tier or a second tier or a third tier player. I'm trying to make those relationships and just get the name out there and come at it with a sense of humility. I've
Okay.
been branding for 13 years, but I'm in a new lane. So, you know, I have to respect that, you know, and that's how I address them. But it's DM after DM after DM on Instagram. And it's funny, eventually you get a couple yeses, and that's how the relationship starts. But to your point, you have to continue to drive, and you have to continue to go. And I love what you said before. You know, what's the worst thing that they're going to do? Tell you to F off, or tell you no for the 13th time?
I
Like,
mean, I was coming from a genuine place, but I would always give advice to people and just say, don't be afraid, especially when you're working with a large company. You don't have to be over like crazy, but they love to hear that, you know, you're passionate about what they do. I mean, this is their life. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, don't get that misconstrued. Like, yes, they want to know that you're passionate. They want to know that that's a story that they can tell, you know, especially even if like they're not going to like use you as a focus. They might use a talent or a model or whatever as like maybe the subject, but for behind the scene, like that's the whole story, you know, that's quotes, whether they're doing post press, anything.
I love it. I love it. All right. So some more questions. Where did you get the name? I get a lot of questions from Instagram about developing the right name for your brand.
Mhm.
So just curious, how'd you come up with Grungy Gentleman?
Well, first, before I answer that, do you think it's a good one or do you think it sucks?
No, I think it's a phenomenal. I think it's such a cool name, and I love the logo too. So, you know,
Thank you.
I'm a big simplicity guy. I'm a minimalist at heart, and so when I see simplistic design and
Mhm.
I see cleanliness and I see a lot of negative space,
Mhm.
I'm immediately attracted to it.
Thank
So
you.
I think the name is really cool, but I'm curious as to how the hell you came up with it.
Thank you. Well, as for, we're going to go in a couple different directions. For the logo, well, the six stripes is our trademark. That's something obviously I came up with, and actually did that with my buddy Vic, who works at New Era, way back when. We were applying it on different things like edges of sleeves of blazers, and on the bicep of a crew neck. We started putting it on bomber jackets and sweatpants, and I was like, whoa, you know, like I was playing with the thickness and thinness of the line of the stripes, and I just came to a happy medium in what I liked, which was sort of a very thin stripe. But anyways, the GG logo, which was an honor, was actually co-designed by Jim Moore, who is the creative director at large for GQ magazine, but he was the creative director up until I think within the year for, you know, several years, and he's, you know, everything you've ever seen, every moment you've seen fashion wise from GQ, he's responsible for. So that was an incredible honor working with him. And the reason why we did that specific GG logo, because we also have a text one where it was written out, and that at that time, that's all I had. Jim sort of was like, you know, you need something to be able to stamp on your clothes. And, you know, he realized that I had a sports focus, and he's like, what about on the corner for basketball shorts? And because like, I'm not a very logo heavy guy. So like, I don't really wear like logos on like, let's say a polo or something like that. But he is explaining to me, you know, you could do it on the back of the neck. And little did I know that's what I do for our t-shirts, you know. You put it on the bottom left in the corner in monochromatic, and you have to be so close to see it, and like it's just good branding exercise. And actually, as I've learned from the consumer, although it's not completely my style, um, Branding is important because, a lot of people work really hard for anything they obviously purchase. And sometimes people want to like flex or let their friends know that, they're wearing something that they're proud of. And so we do that now. It doesn't mean we need to go in like a direction that isn't like true to us and authentic. Um, but we definitely have taken a lot of steps to sort of incorporate subtle branding, and we've been getting a pretty good reaction from it.
Nice, nice. And I just want to add in there, you know, as I was taught as a designer, logos are made and created to identify, not
Mhm.
explain. And I think that's where a lot of a lot of entrepreneurs get tripped up because they want their logo to do everything for them. They want the logo to sell them, market them, deliver for them, all these things, right? You should be able to look at that logo and know right then and there that, it's for a mortgage company. No, not necessarily. The logo is there to identify the brand, not explain the history and the morality and the belief of that brand. Like you're trying to make the logo do too much. So I think you guys did a phenomenal job with keeping it simple and making it very identifiable to the brand. So my next question is, and it's funny, you took the kind of word you hit
Oh,
this
by the
before.
way, and Grungy Gentleman's a play on how I dress. I realized I didn't answer that. Sorry.
So say that again.
Grungy Gentleman is a play on how I dress because I feel like you don't need to be like one like the perception of a gentleman maybe like 20 years ago would be just completely shaven and ultra polished, which I mean sometimes I like to look like that if it's a formal occasion, but
Sure.
I think like you can definitely be a gentleman and be have some scruff or just be a little bit more relaxed, and I think that speaks to sort of a lot of men today.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the folks that you have modeling, which we'll get into in a second, the pro athletes and the hip hop artists, I think a lot of these guys have that grungy gentleman look and feel. I'm noticing over the past couple years where a lot of the millionaires and billionaires and very high net worth folks, they're dressing down, and that's starting to become a fashion statement.
Hmm.
Which I really like personally, like I like walking into a room and somebody perhaps whispering in my ear, "You see that guy over there with the shell top Adidas and the black T-shirt? Yeah, what about him? Well, he owns 17 companies." And he's a huge contributor to this one particular charity, and he's worth X amount of dollars. And like, I love that. Like, that gets me really excited rather than to see the super polished guy in the three-piece suit. Like that's like the obvious, you know what I mean? But to
Well, I
see
think it's relatable, like you could feel like you're a gentleman too, and like you probably are, and just because you don't fit like a complete stereotype of something doesn't mean you aren't that person. So
I love that you
I
bring
feel
that
like
up.
we sort of speak to sort of like, and I hate this word, but like the millennial gentleman, or like even not really, it could be people like, because I'm almost 35 years old, like it's just really it's just like a new age gentleman. Let's scrap that word millennial out. That's what I just think it's the modern gentleman.
Yes. Yes. I love it. I love it. So my next question is the six stripes.
Hmm.
What do they signify?
Very good question. If Grungy.
Aha. And is there any way that someone wearing the brand can figure that out, or like,
No.
no? Very interesting. I love it. I love that. So, okay, let's get into some personal branding stuff. Um, we're going into 2020,
Yep.
and personal branding, I would say, over the past year or so, has become super popular. It's almost like now one of those words people throw around a lot now, and and 9 times out of 10 people don't even know what it is. They
Mhm.
just think it sounds cool, and everybody's talking about personal branding. um I saw this coming 8 years ago when I flipped the script on my brand and said, if I don't put myself out there more with this big personality from New Jersey, I'm just going to be another designer. I'm just going to look like everybody else, and I'm just going to be a commodity. And so I really played that up hard. And now look at it, 8 years later, it's really starting to become this thing. Like if you're not investing in your personal brand, you know, you're going to get left behind. So my question to you is, how important is personal branding through your vision and through your brand?
Mhm. Well, everything I do is for my company with the best interest of my company. I don't really actually push like my personal, like myself to be in front of the camera, although I guess that does happen and it's starting to happen a little bit more. I'm not too comfortable with it, um, but you know, but you have to. So when I'm doing branding, which I take very, very seriously, it's generally for my company.
I got it. Got it. Got it. And what makes you discomfortable about, I should say uncomfortable
Oh,
about
I
getting
just
in?
keep hearing myself. I probably look like a moron, sound like an idiot. Who the hell wants to listen to me?
Dude, I'm telling you right now, we've been spent, 25 minutes already. You do not look like an idiot nor sound like an idiot. And I interview a lot of personalities,
Uh-huh.
right? I think you come very polished. I think you come very professional. And I really am enjoying this conversation because I think you touched upon a lot of key points. And one of my mantras and one of my core values in my business is to never give up.
Mhm.
And that is kind of how I've developed my life and developed my professional and personal career. Is I'm one of those guys that will scrap to the end, you know. And if I have to take my last breath, I will before I say I'm done. I give up. I can't do this anymore, right? And so I appreciate you talking about that before. Now, my other question is, when it comes to branding, it's very, very important to niche and to focus on a very specific. I find it to be very much easier when clients come to me and they're having trouble with their branding and marketing. It's because they're trying to serve a broad audience versus trying to get very specific and working with a very specific customer. So you work with athletes, you work with hip hop personalities and artists. What made you choose that niche?
Well, I think those are just my interests. What happened sort of was I felt like there was a gap, you know, like I said earlier, with menswear in relation to like sports, music, and entertainment. And uh, probably because that's the stuff I like, you know, and I think a lot of guys like that kind of stuff. And, you know, I actually also would like to throw art in there too, because that was part of my original plan. And I feel like that's a lot of guys' interest, you know.
I love it. All right, next question. I feel like we're playing tennis here. Um, next question. How are you connecting and how did you connect
Mhm.
with, so you got partnerships with the Knicks, you got partnerships with the Yankees. These are huge iconic brands. Can you walk us through the relationship building process to working with Jada Kiss, another one of my favorite rappers, right?
Yeah.
um how did you bond those relationships and get those started?
Well, obviously, each relationship is different. Most of them have been like a building process, and it's truly a building process. And what I mean by that is, like one thing would lead to another. I would have one show, and I would get one job, like Madison Square Garden, from that. So, if you want to get specific about the Garden, I'm a diehard Knick fan. Loved working with Madison Square Garden. They, to me, they were first class all the way, every step of the way. And we were
How
pretty.
so?
We were,
How so?
Just, I mean, they supported like a young New York designer. They could work with 300 million people now. I was born on 34th Street on First Avenue at NYU Hospital. I was born at 11 a.m. to make sure I could have tip off by 7 crosstown. But, well, no, I'm just kidding. But like, you know, I just bleed blue and orange, and they knew that. And I was able to design for the Knicks and the Rangers several seasons, and you know, and I still do, like, because like, so some of my partnerships are like local licenses. The specific MSG partnership that you're discussing was a local license deal, which means I'm only allowed to sell within the perimeter of the stadium. It can't be sold like online. It can't be sold in like a store. That inventory is tracked by the Garden, and I'm very, you know, obviously we're very serious about that.
Yeah.
Then there's other assortments that are national runs that'll be sold in, let's say, like Lids or Foot Action or New Era's website or even ours. And we do that with Major League Baseball and the NBA. And but as far as the Garden, what happened was, and how that came about was, we had Eric Decker walking our runway show amongst a lot of professional athletes and musicians that one year, or one season, excuse me. They were at our show. They asked for a meeting, and you know, I wish it always worked this way, but I couldn't believe that like MSG wanted to have a meeting with us. And at the time, because I was so, I was, I guess, an idiot. I didn't know what they were thinking of how they work with us. But I'm like, oh, this is unbelievable. MSG wants to come and have a meeting. So obviously I became very prepared. I treated it like actually like my life was on the line. It was probably super extra and micromanaging, but I went beyond the extra at presentations from what the team meant to me. I even had this, let's just say this. Well, I'll one step at a time. So, you know, made a presentation in case of how much I like the Knicks, because I didn't know which direction they wanted to go. When the meeting happened, and I kind of sensed that they were interested in doing like apparel and accessories, you know, obviously that's the dream. So I couldn't believe it. I remember the door slamming and going, they don't know it yet, but I am definitely making clothes for the Knicks and Rangers, because every second of every hour of the day, I will literally make this my focus until it happens. And if they say no, I will literally go and like handcuff myself to their office. Now, luckily they said yes, and we didn't have to do any of that crazy nonsense. But like, you know, that was my mentality, and I really felt that way, because what an opportunity. And as a young person, like I said, that's generally clawing and killing for things and having to like hunt for stuff. You know, you can't pass up opportunities like that. So when we went to, they wanted me to come by. I think it was like the next day or 2 days after. I think it was 2 days after. It was basically a day and a half, because it was like an afternoon meeting. Just like MSG, and maybe bring my some of my clothes to show to some of their other, because they were able to see everything in my office, so they probably wanted to show other people in their office like my clothes or whatever. So I did that, but I also designed the complete collection without them asking, and like under like 36 hours. And you know, it looked like a capsule collection, but I presented like 30 designs to them and stuff, and it was a little shocking, because they kind of like, I presented them a menu essentially, and they were like, I like this, this, and this, and this, and I was like, good, so do I. and and the rest is history with that partnership. You know, Jadakiss actually was introduced to me through a very good friend. Dipset was introduced. Well, excuse me, let me backtrack. Jada and Styles and Chic was introduced to me through Anthony Donahue, who actually is part of the Knicks fam. So that was way back when, and we've been working together. And Jada's been in 2 of my runway shows. Styles has been in 3. We've hosted parties together. I've coached Jada in basketball. We've done music videos. We've done shoots at their studio. So we've had some good times together. Dipset, well, Juelz has performed and walked on my runway once. Jim has done it twice. I was introduced through Chris Brickley to Joel Santana, who's an NBA trainer.
Yeah, I want to back up a step. So there's a couple things I want to highlight. One was I love your integrity behind once they showed interest, you were literally balls to the wall for 36 hours and you over delivered, which landed you a really awesome partnership.
And like another thing is too, as for any entrepreneur, I mean, this wasn't the case with the garden because they were great and stuff like that. But like, it's not over until not only the contract signed. Oh, great, a contract signed. It's not over until the wire hits. Okay.
Yeah, right.
So basically, you know, and I really mean that because you never know what could happen. And so I just really sort of felt that, you know, I needed to go hard and really, like you said, present them with an incredible presentation, something that they would be moved by because I'm sure they're being pitched all day long, a million times over. But like even after that, and they said yes and picked it, and like you're an absolute moron if you just like, you know, be like, great, I hit the lottery, it's over, we did it. Like, first of all, there could be production issues, shipping issues. I've dealt with tons of weird stuff, things bleeding on things, so things out of your control, you know what I mean? So, you know, I really just sort of not only managed like the meeting, I managed the entire manufacturing process down to the marketing because it mattered to me that much. And I think that, well, my hope is that that translated to the audience, and I feel like it did, and that's why it was probably successful. And that MSG partnership obviously springboarded a lot of my other larger partnerships with sports organizations, and, you know, very excited about. I'm very proud of the stuff we did at MSG.
I love it, and you should be, So I want to again back up a second. So had you not put that fashion show together, MSB being a participant, MSG, yeah, that it wouldn't have come to life. It wouldn't have transpired. It wouldn't have manifested. My question was, what was your strategy to get the athletes to run on the runway and to sport the clothes?
Well, I feel like they were a great representation of us, of our brand, because like, this is gonna not be too. This would be an interesting statement. I just felt like that like when I was obviously attending runway shows as an editor, I for a lot aside from my own publication as a blog, I was an editor at the Rob Report, ESPN. I wrote lightly, contributed for GQ and Esquire, lightly. I did some stuff for Milk Studios, Xenia.com, a bunch of other publications as well. But I was covering a lot of runway shows. I went to Florence, Milan, and Paris 8 times over a 4-year span. And I also was covering New York, so seeing a lot. And it just was like a lot of the same, you know, like especially the runway shows. And like the designs were incredible. Some shows were, don't get me wrong, but insane. But I just like didn't think it was very relatable having like 90-pound, 110-pound, like 6'2" guys on the runway. I mean, like, who really looks like that? And like a lot of clothes don't drape that way on real men. So I wanted it extends more than athletes. We just wanted to use men. And I think athletes are men, and just like these musicians are, just like these actors are, just like these artists, and everyone we are lucky to work with.
And you just cold turkey emailed them or reached out to them?
Some of them, you know, every situation is different. You know, obviously the catwalk is prestigious. So sometimes I'm reaching out to like agencies, and sometimes they're reaching out to me. Sometimes it's through friends. Sometimes the athlete literally reaches out to me. Sometimes they make a case to be in it, which is interesting. But that obviously has come later. But really, though, the real focus of why I wanted to do was I just felt like I didn't want to use like little boys or anything even close to that. And I just wanted to use like men and stuff that I feel like were relatable to like me, my friends, and like also I felt like our audience.
I love it, dude. I love it.
And also, like, you know, it shows like guys that they could wear it too. You know what I'm saying? Like firsthand, like you don't need to tell them; they could just look.
Yeah. Well, I love that you pay attention to the details, the tiny details. I think it's so important to be a little bit aggressive when it comes to the details. Like I'm looking at typography. I'm looking at color scheme. I'm looking at the weights of the fonts. I mean, I look at those tiny things, and the average person doesn't see a brand like I see a brand. And I think that's our advantage as creators and designers, and to be able to put that out there in such an authentic way. And it's just incredible. I love what you're doing. And my question is, what does 2020 look like for you, and what do you got cooking up?
Well, I should have mentioned this earlier. It was beyond an honor and a privilege to work with the Yankees. You mentioned them. We worked with Citi Field and the Mets too, but the Yankees, both of them were, I mean, the displays they did and the signage along with New Era's help, and it was really incredible. We put together some really incredible campaigns that I'm proud of. Product was sensational, which obviously helps. But we have some stuff cooking with the Yanks that should be pretty interesting. I'm be doing something with the NBA as well.
Nice.
I wish I could say a lot more.
Right. We gotta keep things somewhat hushed.
No, I just like, you know, you never want to, and this is a good thing for any person listening, you know, like, talk about when it's released or out. Like, you know, like you get yourself in trouble if you start talking about things, especially with businesses. You know, it goes beyond you. Like other people can get in trouble for it. So like, I don't know, I'm always nervous and pretend like it's not happening until it's literally out. Then like I could be like, okay, I guess maybe now it is, right? So that's kind of how I play it.
So I got two more questions. I know you got a busy day. You're going to NBC. You're going to the Today Show.
I don't know about the Today Show, but I'm filming a 30 Rock for NBC. I think it's a show called Listen Up Live.
Ah, okay. So I know you got a tight schedule today. So I got a couple more questions, and then I'll cut you loose. No. So the question that I have is, so what I decided to do with brandingforathletes.com was really niche down in a particular market where I found there was a gap, like yourself. I see a lot of these athletes, specifically in the NFL, come into the league very, very young, 22, 23. They get a considerable amount of money right out of college, and they tend to spend frivolously from what I'm researching and seeing. And through my research, I find out that after 2 years, 78% of NFL athletes either go bankrupt or they go into major financial stress. And I've never been a pro athlete before, but I've come into a lot of money as a young kid when I first started my business, and I lost over $1 million twice, not once, but twice. And I saw that I could help these kids really start to invest in themselves, because if I had somebody helping me invest my money in things that were going to help me make money later on, I think we would be doing this interview on a yacht somewhere in Fort Lauderdale, right? And that's where I'm starting to really put together, like, how can I relate to these guys? You know, because I've been branding for 13 years. We've worked with Bon Jovi, and we worked with Fabio Viviani, one of the celebrity chefs, and, you know, quite a few celebrities, but never the pro athlete. So my question to you is, what advice would you have for me that's breaking into this new market, that really is passionate about helping people and helping them build like a personal brand around themselves, so that when they come out of the league, because that could be tomorrow. That could be next month. It could be next year. They could get cut. They could get hurt. The average NFL contract is 4 years. So when they come out, they need something, to like a foundation to really build on. So any advice you could give me on how to position this to really help these folks get in front of these folks and really show them what I'm trying to do here?
Sure. So before I give that answer, to get a better understanding, your focus is sort of setting up athletes post-career for financial success, essentially?
To be specific, what I'd like to do is really work with them while they still have the influence, while they're still on the field playing, and help them build a personal brand like Julian Edelman, like Gronkowski, like a lot of these folks that I'm seeing here that are building personal brands. They're building a brand around themselves. And then once they retire or once they come out of the league, they have a website. They have a true brand wrapped around them as an individual, which makes them more marketable, which makes them more valuable, and helps them get stronger endorsement deals or stronger collaborations with perhaps other brands and other businesses. So,
well, look, there's a couple things. Obviously, my advice would be to focus on whatever, like try to get a client or two and really focus on that particular client and have them succeed. So word spreads through that way, because no referral will be better than actually a player really believing it and saying it authentically. But like, you got to also remember, a lot of marketing is different just based on the individual and what you can do with that talent. So when you're making a presentation, just make sure that you're really understanding who that person is and it makes sense, because if not, they'll just go to their current agency and they might not be able to do as good of a job as you, and they might not even have the time to do as good of a job as you. But they can get it done in a half-assed way or maybe a really good way. So in order for you to sort of, for them to feel like a need to sort of like, wow, you need to provide value. And in order to provide value, I think it needs to be very unique to them. And let me give you, it's really an analogy more than an example, but with our company, sometimes the guys don't like getting the same clothes. They'll be like, who else got this? Because they don't want to wear the same thing as everyone else. And like the same thing goes with your marketing pitch. They don't want to hear the same shit that you just, or that other people, you've told other people, or that they've heard before. They want to hear something new. If you're trying to move somebody who's an athlete or an entertainer or anything in that, any what of like, do you know how many times these people are getting pitched per minute, per second? Like, I don't know, if you waste your time, you know what I mean? If you basically don't put an effort in, you're going to be wasting your time and theirs.
So make it specific to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why, there's plenty of stories of pitches that have gone wrong, whether it be in professional sports or even with like endorsement contracts. I'm sure you can look them up and you can learn a lot from them, but generally the underlying thing that is the same with all of them is that they just didn't pay enough attention to the subject and didn't make them feel special and important within that presentation. And if you really show that you care and learn things, and I also think that it'd be important what you do to set them up with some kind of charity too. That could bring on a lot of opportunity for them for good, which is great. And I personally think that when you do good, it usually gets paid forward, and people generally like people that do that. Look what JJ Watt did in Houston for their recovery efforts, and how could you not root for a guy like that, right? So would I go to follow JJ Watt on social media? Why not? I would support that guy because look at all the good he's doing. He's a heck of an athlete. I think he's awesome.
Yeah.
So
yeah. A lot of these guys have, we just did a rebrand for Brandon Copeland from the Jets. And that was one of the things that I really saw from him. He really stood out to me. I mean, UPenn grad, very financially literate. He's a professor at UPenn. He has a foundation called Beyond the Basics, where he helps underprivileged kids. And I just saw him as not the average athlete, you know. And I told him when we were rebranding, that was on his old site, but I said, I think you should really play into that as a brand statement for you, because you really are. I mean, you are beyond the average athlete. And you know, just the way that he got into the league was very fascinating. You know, he was cut, and then he was asked to go to this combine, and out of hundreds of people, him and another individual were picked. You know, and he was like, that was like crazy. I didn't even expect to get picked, and I did. So I gotta work my ass off to stay here. But his big pitch now, and his big vision and mission is to really help other athletes not rely so heavily on the league, and to help them get financially literate so that they have a chance after they're done. And I think that is huge. So he wants to create this online platform. It's more of an educational online platform, and hopefully we can help him, you know, blow that out when he has the time. And because again, while they're playing, and the schedules are crazy. You know, we had Jonathan Harrison reschedule 3 times to be on the show, because it's just, he gets his schedule when he gets it, and it is what it is. Like, you know, you're not going to not show up because you got to do a podcast with Henry. But totally hear you out. And I really want the audience to be picking up on this as well. You really got to get specific and make them feel special. I think that was a great way of putting it. I don't know how else you could put it. You make them feel special. You deliver the value up front. You be very transparent with them and up front. Like, this is what I'm trying to do. This is what I want to do. And I'm willing to put in that work to make that happen.
I also think it's very important to not overwhelm them with how much of an effort, like, that they would need to put in, because what the best case scenario is that they do really love what you're doing and passion, and they want to do that voluntarily, and they're telling you how much they want to be involved versus you telling them how much they need to be involved. I feel like, you know, essentially saying how much this could be a good complement to what you already have in place, and this is the return you can get it for it, is a really good approach.
Aha. Beautiful. Well said. Jace, man, I can't thank you enough for spending the time with us today.
Of course.
And just breaking it all down. We have a mutual friend, Stretch. He's our videographers. He does phenomenal work for both of us, and that's how we met. Big shout out to Stretch.
That's
And
Stretch all of our videos. He's amazing. The GOAT. At Stretch Dizzle on Instagram.
Just phenomenal, man. Phenomenal. We met I was speaking at the Microsoft flagship store on Fifth Ave, and he was one of the guys. And after my speech, he came up to me and he was like, dude, like, you almost had me balling, dude. And then I was asking him what he was doing, and it was just like the happy marriage right then and there. It was like, boom, he did his first piece for me, and I was blown off this chair. And
yeah, Stretches.
That was like 4 years ago, 3 years ago. It was crazy. But we will definitely, this is not the first time we're going to see each other. I can promise you that. And dude, I'm a huge supporter of the brand. What I'm going to do is I'm going to chop up this video and help you get more brand awareness out for Grungy, and anything that I could do to support, you know, you let me know. And congratulations again on the engagement.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm the lucky one in that situation. It's been a very special time, and I'm very lucky.
Awesome, man. Any parting words for entrepreneurs that are either starting out or veterans in the space for 2020?
Outwork everyone. When you're not working, somebody else is.
I'm going to leave it at that. Jace, thanks again for coming on the show, man. Really appreciate you.
Yes, absolutely. Hopefully we'll do it again soon.